What is up, guys? Clay Enjoyer here, and it's time to enjoy. And I made a duck inspired by this. If anyone was actually curious where I found the guy's channel, that is his channel. But for my sculpture of a duck, mine's gonna be a little bit different. One being it's not an animation, so it's not gonna come to life and start shooting 9mm rounds at the nearest cat, but it's actually made of clay like all my other sculptures instead, which just starts like a normal duck, or at least as normal as I can, because I've never really made a duck before, so this is kind of the closest thing I think that they're supposed to look like, only using that video as reference. With a little bit of clay squished on the back, I can make the duck look a little bit less round and give them their feathers that little thing they have on the back where it's like a little pointy. With a smoothed out duck body, I can rip it apart to make room for the weapons that will eventually go in either side of the arms and on the top of its back and in front of its chest cavity. I don't really know what that part is called, but I gotta make rooms for some guns somehow to at least seem like they come out of the duck, even though they technically wouldn't be deep enough. But what I do know is that I need to cover up this terrible aluminum foil because it looks bad, and I want this sculpture to try and look a little bit smooth, but I have no idea how well I'm going to accomplish that. Now, this blob of clay is going to be the first weapon, which, with a little bit of clay on the sides to make some more defined sections, and to make the video a tiny bit longer, I can add some missiles, because this is going to be like a missile silo kind of thing. Or maybe a missile rack, I'm not really sure. I've heard it described both ways, but what I do know is that I need to add some extra detail because this missile launcher thing is looking a little bland, as well as this gearbox thing to make it look like the rockets like gradually can move up and down into and out of the duck. But I never really thought this through that well, other than put detail on this thing and make it look like it might work, but obviously it's clay, so it's not going to actually work. Now that the first weapon is done, I can add a panel of clay on top to make it seem like if this duck was actually alive, then the panel would close in the space hiding the weapons. But I want to actually make the face first, because for some reason I thought that the weapons would get in the way, and I disagree now, but whatever, because the mouth and eyes are really not that bad, because it's more just little circles and a little beak, I guess. Followed by the machine gun, which is a rounded thing, but it's kind of similar anyway because it just looks like a honeycomb with some holes inside it, which then can be given a couple lines extra detail because I think it's a little bit simple, and then I can just stick it in place right on there. I did kind of want to add some extra wires and such, but I wanted it to be a little bit smoother because I thought that would fit better. To finish off the machine gun, I can add two panels on either side to act as a little bit of variation in comparison to the just single panel on the back for the missiles. The final duck-related detail I have to sculpt is the feet, which I also figured I would just get out of the way now instead of doing it at the very end. But then I just didn't know why I didn't do that with the face instead of leaving it until now. But I guess better late than never. With the very simple feet done, I can now blend them in. And now I can finally start working on making the first big gun, which I'm taking inspiration from battleship guns. You know, the ones that go like boom, boom. I'm not entirely sure how to describe them, but they have like two like turrets on the side. I wasn't originally aiming for something battleship-esque, but I just figured it would be a little bit more interesting than just a second machine gun, and I do agree it is interesting. Or at least as interesting as it is from a creator's point of view. At least for the moment, I'm gonna try and keep the two turrets from touching, which is what this little piece of clay right here is supposed to help with to make the barrels straight. but eventually in the baking process, they'll lean ever so slightly towards each other, but at that point, it'd be too late. But I need to make the gun actually fire stuff, so I need to drill some holes for it, obviously. But because the gun is looking a little bit flat, I can give it some extra panels with some extra rivets in place, like the rocket launcher, to make it more interesting and to give more detail when I eventually paint it. With the wing in place to disguise the gun, I can put it in place. But like the second gun that I will build momentarily, it's actually just going to be put off camera so I can bake it separately to make painting easier. Now for the final gun, I thought I had too many traditional guns that were just firing bullets, well, and rockets, but this weapon is going to be a giant laser gun, which is actually already completed. I can put the wing on it and then do the same process for the duck, but I'll end up baking it separately, so painting is also easier, which, speaking of, we're already painting. Starting with a dark metallic silver, which is perhaps a little bit too dark because I can barely see any of the actual metallic. Because this video is not long enough, I need to paint all the guns with this gray so I can have extra video length and you guys can automatically see that I'm painting it silver instead of more like inferring. But that's okay because this makes the video better. With all of this painted silver, I can now move on to the extra details, like painting the duck's insides with that silver too, because I want the inside of the duck to look like a robot and the outside of the duck to look like an actual duck, or at least as close to a duck as I can, because this duck is kind of bumpy and I didn't really spend a whole lot of time going back and being careful. But I can do some dry brushing on all of the weapons too to make them look worn down and give them some extra detail that makes them look less flat. Starting with painting this giant gunboat thing a red, because I wanted the colors to be a little bit more interesting than white and gray for the most part, and blue for the laser because I thought it contrasted nicely in comparison to something like an orange or a green. With that, I can do some extra wear and tear with an even lighter gray on the gray parts to make them look even more worn down than the previous parts, because I want to add a little bit of extra detail and even more wear and tear. I also did the same process for the missile silo so everything looks correct. Then I can paint the tips of the rockets a nice bright red because I feel like this is the most appropriate missile color. But this duck is looking kinda ugly because this white is like an off-white, so I can actually paint it in a correct white all over the body within several coats because it's white and white does not cover good over black. But it looks pretty smooth in the end, and even though it is very smooth, I'm not exactly happy with it because for whatever reason, I could not get out the brush strokes. Now the duck is really close to being complete now. I can paint the beak and its feet in the nice bright orange to really draw your eyes toward it and make this duck, well, look like it's supposed to. But because I thought its features were looking a little bit flat, I grabbed some lighter orange and dabbed it on the beak and on the feet facing forward just a little bit so it looks like light is hitting it, making it look less flat. And guess the theme of this video, to make it longer. Now I can glue all the weapons in place that I had saved. With all the weapons glued in place and not falling or breaking apart, I need a base. Starting with this pancake of clay with a bunch of details which are damaged, but I can break it like a brittle pancake because it's gonna be a very broken concrete slab, because when I don't know what a theme I should do, I kinda just go on concrete slab, which, as it's a concrete slab, you paint it gray and do a bunch of dry brushing in lighter grays to really get all the details out and make it look as real as possible. With the top of the base complete, I can paint the sides black as I do for all my builds, do a little bit of white in the duck's eyes to give it some life, find some holes that are magically there, We'll slide the duck in place. He can actually stand without hot glue. And now it's time for the reveal. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more armored ducks in the future. I may even do an armored baby in the next one. I don't know. It was on my agenda, but I got another idea now. Alright, see you next video. Bye.